we had to make a public domain block, like from the 1800s. We had to give it a spin. And I really liked that group and the challenge it gave me. Just to think, how can I change this block that just has some triangles and squares into something totally different?
Welcome to Quilting on the Side, the podcast where we uncover the secrets to turning your passion for quilting into a profitable side hustle.
I'm Tori from the Quilt Patch by Tori.
And I'm Andi from True Blue Quilts. And together we're your co-hosts on this exciting journey of creativity, entrepreneurship, and all things quilting.
We're here to help you navigate the world of quilt pattern design, course creation, digital marketing, and running an online quilt business. We've been through the ups and downs ourselves, so we know what it takes to make money from your favorite hobby.
I'm so excited to hear from Nancy from Patchwork Breeze. So tell us, Nancy, a little bit about how you started quilting and when it became a business for you.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you. I started quilting in 1976. It was the bicentennial. I was in college. I read an article in the newspaper about quilting, and I think because it was an historical thing. And I thought, quilting? Well, I kind of have seen quilts, but only at my grandmother's. So I thought, well, maybe that sounds fun. I was always sewing from the age of 10 on. So there were no books, no classes, nothing. I didn't know about guilds. I was a city girl. So I thought, well, I've sewn clothes. It can't be too much different. I did get a quilt top done. It was squares. It turns out later I found out it was trip around the world, but I did it square by square. After I graduated from college, I got a job on the west side of Michigan in a rural community. And that's when I discovered that there were some people who actually quilted. And the first store had opened about 1980 in our area, a fabric store. So I took a class there, and it was, I'm going to say, probably the best class I ever took because it was all hand quilting. We sewed the pieces by hand. We cut them with cardboard and pencil because at that time there were still not rotary cutters or anything to help out. So you used cardboard, and the process of just learning every single step helped me later on. But that project I still have, and I just love it. We layered it with polyester batting at the time and hand stitched, learned how to bind. So it was probably one of the better things I did because it allowed me to say, if I could do this and I know the basics behind quilting, I can probably do any type of design I want.
You know, the saying, everything old is new again. These trends cycle through, and there's a lot of interest now in the slow stitching movement of doing every step by hand. So that's great that you have that foundation.
Yes, I've seen slow stitching as in quilting, but I guess I haven't paid attention to that. I like my machine. It makes it a little faster.
Yes, definitely. So when did you turn this new hobby into a business?
I retired from teaching in 2003, and I decided I was going to see if I could at least work at a quilt store. And there was one in a nearby rural town. She wanted somebody to help out, and she let me come into the store, design some patterns for her. And that was 2005 that I finally got that job. I liked designing patterns, and she said, "You're making good patterns. we'll just print them up and you can sell them at the store. So that was basically my start in pattern design. And it was in 2017, 16 or 17, I can't remember now, that I actually sold some of my patterns to Cut Loose, which is a subsidiary of Checker. And I still have those patterns on that site, and they sell, and Checker's happy with them. So
one page or really short?
There have to be two sides of one cardboard type pattern. I have to think about how I can make it concise yet understandable for people, and not much room for illustration. So yes, it is an interesting type of pattern, but it works for my patterns because they're fairly simple, and yet I try to get something that looks unique, elegant, I guess, at times.
Yeah, and for our listeners that aren't enjoying this video recording, tell us about the quilt behind you that's so pretty with the different stair step almost layout.
I was an Island Batik ambassador for a couple years till I had to have hip surgery, and I thought I can't do it another year for them because it was going to take me out for 2 months. So they had projects every month. We had to come up with, they had a theme, and they would give us the pack of fabric to work with. And this was batiks that were quite, I guess, tropical in sense. We had to do something modern. Well, I didn't quite understand modern, but I thought, well, if I stair step, we'll see what happens. And it's a narrowed type V. I put on my blog at the time that I was having a naming contest too. And I had people type in what they thought it would be, and somebody came up with dancing DNA. And I said, it looks like DNA strands, and dancing makes it sound really exciting. So I said, you won.
That's great. And that really is a descriptive title if you think of how those DNA strands kind of weave back and forth and make those different shapes. It really is fun. And I just am in love with that quilt.
Well, I really like it too. And it's quite a large one. I think it's about a double-sized quilt.
Sure. I didn't realize we had that in common. I was an Island Batik ambassador for a couple of years too, but I don't think we overlapped. But yeah, I do find, and I work pretty well under pressure with deadlines. So if I have those challenge criteria, I was able to come up with designs pretty easily. Tell us a little bit about your design process. Do you enjoy using someone else's parameters, or would you rather just come up with things yourself?
I don't mind parameters, but I do like to be creative on my own. I belong to a Facebook group of quilt pattern designers, and we had to make a public domain block, like from the 1800s. We had to give it a spin. And I really liked that group and the challenge it gave me. Just to think, how can I change this block that just has some triangles and squares into something totally different? And I succeeded. In fact, I have a quilter who happens to be a third cousin, and I just got one of those quilts back this past weekend from her. She did a beautiful job, and she said, because she has designed patterns too, she said, you need to design a pattern for that and publish it. She said, I've never seen anything like it. And it's just a paper piece pattern.
So that's coming out soon. It
will probably be at least 6 months.
Sure. It
I
always
have,
takes longer than you would hope.
it
to get
takes
some of
longer
these.
than I think, and I have a couple other irons in the fire.
Sure.
So,
Following that train of thought in terms of putting out new designs, do you have a group of testers that you plan to work with when you have a new project ready? Do you have a schedule throughout the year that you plan to release a certain number of new patterns?
I had a, shall I say, a floating schedule that I could float it to the next week or the next month. Things come up in a busy life, so it's sometimes family things take precedence over some other things. But I don't have a group of testers yet. I have one friend who would do things and check them out for me. But basically, I would make the pattern 3 times myself. But I know that the best thing about testers is that they read the pattern differently than the designer does, which gives the designer the ideas that maybe this isn't quite worded right because I didn't understand this, or they find something that might be great and something that might need a little fixing. So that's good. And I'm hoping to get that group of people going soon.
Good. Yeah, I have to confess that I don't have a group of testers either. So I thank you to the audience out there that has ever attempted my patterns, because I just, figure it out and hope I'm being clear enough. And I'm happy to apologize and make corrections if needed. How did your years of working in the quilt store influence the designs that you eventually publish? Are you able to get that feedback from the customers to guide you in towards any certain type
I
of
think
block or technique?
if anything, I listened to what the customers were saying, and it may have been just, I taught classes at both of the stores I worked at too, but I listened to the customers and what I was hearing, because most of them were older, and not that I'm young, but they would say, well, I have some fabric that's so much like that. And they would say, I really like it, but I have to think about, do I really need it, type of thing. And that's where I wanted my focus to be on, like scrappy, creative type of things, because people have things in like the 50 age range up. They have fabrics and all, but they want to do something with it. And although I have patterns, what I like to do is tell people, be creative, look at something and see what you can change up. Maybe instead of putting just 2.5-inch rectangles in it, slice the rectangle in half and splice a piece of fabric inside of it, and then cut that. And see what happens with placing those in, because that'll add more interest to the quilt.
Now, at the time of this recording, the event hasn't happened yet, but I know you have a scrap challenge coming up. Can you tell us about that event?
Yes. I am one of the participants in Conquer Your Fabric Scraps Summit. And November 4th is when it starts. There are 14 presenters, and I am just delighted to be able to be part of it. And we're talking about how we organize our scraps and what we do, what we use, and what we have to say toss away. It's not, some people like tiny pieces, some people don't. And then we each are doing some type of presentation that deals with something you can do with your scraps. So I have a pattern that I've had it in the works for a while. I just haven't put it out there. And I thought, well, I'm going to share that one. And there's so many different variations that can happen. such as what I said. Splice the piece. That was my thing. If you don't have enough of the length you need, splice it and put a piece inside that's different and see what happens. It's going to be there are so many different people involved in it that have something to do with pieces of fabrics, or in fact, one of them deals with leather.
Ooh, that's interesting. Yeah, there's quite an array of additional things. You know, I know some quilters veer off into the bag making arena and like to do, or stuffed animals and dolls and do the 3D stuff. And then I also have seen the cartonnage, the fabric box kind of
yes,
work. So lots of options there for using your fabric, using your scraps. You mentioned working with different sizes. What are your favorite go-to units? How small do you keep?
I'm going to say I've reduced it to about 2.5-inch squares. I will sew strips of fabric if they're about 1.5 inches to 2.5. I'll sew them together to make new fabric out of it. But I had saved little pieces because I had taken some courses from, I'm going to say, fabric artists, landscape artists that used fabric. And I thought, I loved it. I just loved it. And I've done other things. I've done the stuffed animals. I've done the pillow totes. I just have tried everything except cartonnage. And I actually know the lady, Claudia, who's from Grand Haven, Michigan. And she's wonderful. But I thought, nope, that's just too much. And now I'm actually cutting down what I'm working on. I just don't need all that.
I have a hard time throwing small bits away, even though I don't use much like you. I don't use much smaller than 2.5-inch squares, or maybe 1x2 rectangles to get a chunky border or something. But I'm a sucker for bonus triangles. So if anybody in a group is trimming down flying geese or something, they just know to pass them over to me. I've got a huge collection. So
well, that's good to know, because I like those bonus triangles too, but it is something. I've done 2 little table runners with them. I'll send them your way. I'll even sew them if you'd like me to.
Oh my goodness.
I use them as leaders and enders, so
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have a basket of pinwheels and a basket of hourglass quarter square triangle units that will eventually get made into something. But yeah, and that's the thing with scraps, is you start using them and then all of a sudden you've made more.
Yes. Well, if I can tell you what I did, I had a girlfriend's daughter was graduating in 2002, and she loved green and yellow. So Mom wanted a quilt. I made a quilt. There were leftover pieces, leaders and enders. I then made a little table runner out of that, and there were trimmings off of that. I made a landscape that's like 5 by 10 or something, but it was a river, and there was green for the bushes, and it was all these little tiny, like 1/4-inch pieces.
Oh my God.
And I put netting over them, and I just did a lot of quilting on top, and it hangs in my spare bedroom.
Oh wow.
But it's like, okay, that quilt, I used everything I could have used.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds fun. So getting back to some of these upcoming projects and different things you have going on, I've noticed that you are part of, or you've offered patterns with the Quilt Block Mania group.
Yes.
Is that an ongoing endeavor to design blocks?
For me, it is. I love the group of women. I love that there's a theme. We can do any type of quilting we want, whether it's just a block or paper pieced. I like paper piecing, so I've been designing some paper piecing patterns. It's been really fun to see what everybody comes up with. And since it's a theme, then the people who are downloading these patterns, sometimes there's 24 people in it. So they have 24 blocks that they can make into a large quilt or table runners. And the last one this last month was baby. Mm-hmm. And I looked at what the other people had listed and I said, I'm doing a crib mobile. And I said, this shouldn't be too hard. And it really is a cute, simple pattern with a canopy and hanging toys going around the mobile picture. But yeah, that has challenged me too. And I love it. I love having to, I shouldn't say this, meet a deadline, but challenge in a sense of how am I going to do it this month? Right. And I think this next year, I'm going to look at the list of what is up on the 12 months. One of the other gals did every month was a block. It was buildings in a town, but they were simple enough. And that was her theme. And whatever it was, like, I think the baby was a baby store or something like that. But I thought, yeah, maybe a theme this time, because then they could take all my blocks and they will all kind of blend together.
Yeah. I love how the one project can spark that creative process and lead you down the road to, more options. Because that's always my problem. And I have to apologize anytime I'm teaching a class is that, I'm trying to stick with just what I advertised and teach you how to do this one thing. But there's all of these other things you could do too.
I do that as well. So. I give them a little more because I want to share. That was my whole idea of working in a quilting store and designing patterns is I want to share my knowledge with other people. So they can have more fun and excitement in quilting.
Yeah, exactly. It just is that kind of never-ending cycle that the more creative ideas you start and pursue, the more you tend to come up with along the way. With the Quilt Block Mania that some of the designs the block designs are free each month. And then the designers have the option of charging a fee for those patterns later. They can take away the free option after that first month. How have you handled that? Because that can be kind of a hot topic in the design world of giving stuff away for free versus the benefits of exposure and list building and all that kind of stuff. So I'm still weighing it. What I chose to do was after the month was over, I put a price on them and my patterns are on PayHip right now. It's up to each individual. I know there's a few of them, the gals that design, they have so much going for their marketing and all that they'll have theirs free for maybe forever. But I thought it's kind of one of those things is even at a store you go, whether it's the grocery store, the sale is on these days and you're not going to get it. I'd like to have the people come during that month because I know then how that works with perhaps how I posted the information about it, how I shared the marketing or something, versus if it's just up there all the time, I'm not sure. But it's something I'm trying to get organized with is seeing what's happening with how the trending in my clientele works. So right. Yeah, there's so much of the back end research that we do as business owners to find out that return on investment, which things are actually the most popular with our audience.
Right.
I think that's a smart way to go, to see how your audience takes it, how they like it.
That's great. Well, you mentioned designing fabric. So tell us how that got started and what all involved with that process.
I started wishing I knew how to design fabric 20 years ago. I had always been very much interested in computers, but didn't have the opportunity to do much until in 2018, I saw this advertisement, or not an advertisement, a post in a group I belonged to. And this lady was giving a class on how to use Adobe Illustrator to design patterns. And I said, oh, okay, I'm going to do that. I took the class. It was just a short little class. And I thought, this is what I've wanted to know for 20 years. So I took her big, master class, and I really liked it. I met a number of wonderful artists and surface pattern designers through that class, and we've kept together in the sense of talking, country to country, basically. So one of the gals in this group had said she's going to start a designer group, and she did. She had taken another designer's class to learn more about the business side of things. So 10 of us joined to start with, and I believe there are 14 now. And we are working with Paintbrush Studios to have our fabrics printed. And we all do our own thing. Mine is more geometric and not too wild, where some people have these beautiful French provincial looking pieces of fabric. Some of the ladies have gone off on other routes with designing on paper and journals and clothing, selling to designers. Wow. But it has opened up another interest for me, is to be able to design a pattern that I'd like, and I'm hoping to be able to kit it with some of my patterns. One of my successful, I'm going to say, patterns was we have gone to Drummond Island, Michigan quite often as a family. They have pudding stones there, which are just a conglomerate and lots of red stones within it. I guess it's jasper. So I took one of those photos and I changed it into a surface design pattern. I've printed it on fabric, and I was actually making pot holders and other things with this fabric, selling it at a consignment shop there and doing really well. And I thought, I wonder if I could do fabric for what's around my own area, and then perhaps sell it through online sales. Maybe the store that's close by would be willing to purchase some. That has been really fun. And I feel at times that I don't have enough time to devote to the pattern designing.
What is the kind of the life cycle of a fabric design process? I guess if you're printing your own fabric, it can happen whenever, but is there, is it a quick process? Is it something that you have to send away and wait a while to get the physical fabric back and then make things with it?
Well, with this group I'm in, which is, it's called Sage Designers, we will create our patterns, and we have 2 different times a year. And there has been in the past, there was a 3rd time because a lot of the people wanted to get their patterns printed. Our contract with them is that we have to buy 1,000 yards total. So if we don't get enough of that, we wait for a while longer. The designing, I take probably the longest designing of the group. But the other ladies, they have portfolios like you wouldn't believe. So they just pull theirs and choose what they want. The turnaround on the printing is quite quick there. I know with some of before I even started with, a paintbrush studio type company, I was doing Spoonflower and one that was in Texas that has since gone out of business. And I could put it up, I could order it, but at the time it was taking about 2 weeks for the turnaround. And I know I've had notices come up that Spoonflower is a little quicker now, where they're hoping 7 days. And I also joined another company called Raspberry Creek, and I haven't gotten anything from them yet. And I did one other one, Carriage House Printery, which is in Ohio. I did not use any of my designs, but I did order fabric to see what it was like, and it is luscious fabric for a cotton. It was really nice. So that's the one thing I look at too, is I'll order just a small fat quarter piece. I usually wait on Spoonflower till they have a sale just to see how it prints and all. And there were a few times a couple years ago where I wasn't pleased with the color didn't come out right. And so that's something too. And that's one of the things with Paintbrush Studios is we have to proof our piece. They send us a proof of, it's about a fat quarter size, and we pay for the proof, and then they send it and we check out, does it meet our specifications? And if it doesn't, they'll tweak things.
Mm-hmm. Is there a lot of upfront cost, initial investment to get started with surface design, or are these kind of print-on-demand companies like Spoonflower making it a little bit easier to get started in that work?
They're definitely making it easier. I know as an individual, for me, I just needed my computer and then to buy the monthly subscription for Adobe Illustrator. Mm-hmm. But no, those on-demands make it easy enough. And if you know to wait until there's a sale to try it, my hope was that other people would find my fabric and purchase it, but I haven't had that. But Spoonflower, if you look, I think there's maybe almost 20,000 people are posting their designs. Mm-hmm. It is a big company.
Yeah, they really are getting to be the big dog in terms mm-hmm. of having designs available. I guess that makes it nice for the consumer because they can find that really unique piece, but it does make it hard as a designer to try and break into it.
It takes a lot of searching to find that piece that you want to. You could type in flowers and you could go for hours through their flower choices.
I love that. The basis of what you guys created, where you got a group together and you contracted design for the group so you could put in the money up front as a group and get your fabric printed, and you don't have to rely on a large fabric company for that. And I think that was very smart and very creative.
Well, it's the one, Susan was the person who came up with the plan, and she just needed the people to join in.
I think our listeners can take away, be a leader, get your people together, make it happen.
Yeah. In fact, she even got them together just really quick. It was in August. There are 3 or 4 of them going down to the quilt market in Houston.
Yeah. Market is for the industry people, and then festival backs right up to be more open to the public part of it. So Have you had the chance, Nancy, to go to Houston for either of those events ever in your life?
I've been at festival. I took that was something I loved to do. I have been taking coach trips, and there's a company close by. Well, it's only about 25 miles away. And the lady has designed trips around quilting for quilters, but she comes up and with all these different things too. One time we went for a festival and some other things, but we went to dig sapphires. I can't remember if that was West Virginia but we were digging and panning for sapphires. It was an experience that I never thought I'd have. And she plans so many wonderful things, and that's been something that I really liked to do, because it gave me a chance to see places that maybe traveling with my husband, it was the wrong time of the year or something like that, or he didn't want to go. As I've said, I'd love to go to Maine. I'm still working on that.
You're bringing so many unique ideas today, like with your pattern design or your fabric design and your pattern design, and just sharing that as another avenue in the quilting world to create trips around quilters. Like, what a great idea. And how fun for you to be able to go in and, how do you say it? For sapphires? Dig for sapphires?
Yeah.
Mine for sapphires. Did you find
and it was basically you're looking in a creek. You're in a creek with your old tennis shoes on, looking for sapphires. And then the other thing they did was, it would be like kind of like panning for gold, but they brought a 5-gallon bucket, and everybody got one dumped in front of them. And then we just looked through. A few ladies got some very nice sapphires, and they had them made into jewelry.
That would be the dilemma. Do you put it in jewelry, or do you somehow build a quilt around your gems?
Maybe little cushions for them quilted cushions to set upon.
Yes. Fun. So with all these different endeavors, Nancy, what do you think has made the most impact on the business building side of things? What mix of products and services have you found most profitable?
I would have to say service-wise, it was in 2021 that I actually got my LLC and told myself I'm really a business instead of doing business as person. But what I have found I needed to get me going was community. I had to find people who were like me with similar interests, whether that be like joining the Academy for Virtual Teaching and finding out what it was like to try to do Zoom classes and doing the marketing on the computer and online, and all these different things you have to do. It was overwhelming me, but having people like next to me as, yeah, we'll all do this together. The other thing I did find I really found helpful, I joined Craft Industry Alliance back when Abby Glassenberg made the first email that went out and said, I'm starting this. I have learned so much and contacted so many people. That's where I heard about the Academy for Virtual Teaching. That's where I heard about H&H Americas, and I just went this last year. That too was finding and connecting with people and looking and seeing what they're doing and sharing. The people sharing, it's not like I'm keeping this a secret. I want to help you. I'm still working on the marketing, and I know Tori's helped a lot with her program too.
DMMC, Digital Marketing Magic Community.
I've gotten some good ideas that I'm actually working on following up this Fabric Scrap Summit.
Yeah, that's great. It is wonderful to have that community of people that can kind of hold you accountable to take action, because we're all smart women. We know what we should be doing. It's just getting the motivation sometimes is a little hard when you don't see an immediate return on your efforts.
So the question I've got to follow up here is I'm really curious about, you've talked about doing in-person and virtual teaching. So do you have a preference?
I like in-person teaching, but I don't like the traveling because I usually would have to travel on my own. And I like having a person go with me. I like in-person teaching because it is so interactive, close by. The person and the group feeds off of each other, sharing and excitement and all. I haven't done but one virtual event, and it was just a little thing. So I want to do virtual. I just have to get over that hump of feeling a little intimidated by the whole computer screen thing. Although I've been on enough Zoom meetings with various people that I'm getting to understand the controls at the bottom and some of what happens. And I think that's because, too, that's that community again. People are allowing, it's like, it's okay if you make a mistake at first and you'll learn. And so I would like to do both, but my limit's about 150-mile drive by myself. So
I'm ready for rapid fire. Are you ready, Nancy?
I don't know.
We start out with, what's your favorite color?
Teal or aqua.
Our second rapid fire question is yardage or pre-cuts?
Pre-cuts now. I remember reading something that Alex Anderson had written, and she said, you don't need to buy a yard of every fabric to make a quilt. You need a third of a yard of 5 colors or 5 things. And she's right. My yardage now is going for backings. I can get more variety by buying pre-cuts than I can with yards.
Sure. A tangent, though, it's related to the pre-cut issue because a friend of mine was just so ecstatic that she found a jelly roll that had straight edges versus the pinked edges. So what's your feeling on pinking?
I don't like it for jelly rolls. I would do pinking if I were doing clothing or something that was like a pillow where it had curves, but those little ends fray. And the other thing is, I can't keep a consistent 1/4-inch seam when I'm looking at a point that I have to hit. That's like telling me I have to hit the center of the target with the arrow from 50 feet. So if it's just a straight cut, I can follow that with a 1/4-inch foot and do a good job.
No one knows if you're supposed to go to the top of the cut or the bottom of the V when you're measuring, and it just freaks people out. So to the manufacturers out there, please stop with the pinking. What is your favorite notion or tool to use in your quilting?
Oh, my favorite one right now is, and I can't remember if it's the Zipper Ripper or the Zip Ripper. It's a little electronic battery-operated seam ripper. And I do my paper piecing, and sometimes things don't go right, but that just zips it right out, and I don't hesitate thinking, oh, I have to pick it out with my seam ripper. It is just marvelous. And if I get things just right, I can find that even a seam on like a 6.5-inch block, zip right through it.
Nice. I'm gonna have to look at that. All right, our next one is, do you have any other hobbies?
Other hobbies. I like baking. Um, I do a little gardening in the summer, just a little. And I like reading things like detective mysteries.
Fun, fun. There's a gal in the quilt design group that has kind of pivoted, and she writes a whole quilting themed mystery series. So I'll have to
Oh,
send you those titles, and you might enjoy
yes.
those. Great.
I like mysteries.
Yeah, it's fun diversion from our
Absolutely.
work life. And our last question is, who is inspiring you right now? And this doesn't necessarily have to be within the quilt world, but if there's a designer out there or somebody else in your life that's inspiring you.
I would have to say my inspiration is when I'm able to talk to, I have the third cousin I spoke of earlier, third cousin or whatever, but she has a shop. She has design patterns, and she is so easy to talk to and so encouraging and explains things to me with regards to designing patterns and such. And the other one is another friend that I met a few years back at a quilt store. And since she has left the store, we get together once in a while, and she is so encouraging. And also the ideas she has and the offerings she makes to suggest things to help me. Those two people.
That's great. It's been so wonderful to chat with you this evening, Nancy, and hear all about your journey and your business and what you're doing.
Well, where can I find you?
Patchworkbreeze.com.
And Instagram and Facebook, I would assume, under the same name.
Yes, I got them all.
Good.
So,
well, good luck with that scrap summit, and we will look forward to future Quilt Block Mania designs and your wonderful fabric as well.
okay, thank you. I'm excited about all the things I have planned coming up.
Well, we wish you all the best in those endeavors, Nancy. Thanks so much.
Thank you. It's been great talking to you.
Okay, so that's
And scene.
We're done.
You did it.
Hey, I like that better than teaching.
So, Tori, what was your biggest takeaway from that great discussion with Nancy?
I really enjoyed her creativity, and she got my ideas going with the different things she was bringing with getting the group together to have her fabric printed, and just the idea of the other lady she told the story about, bringing in quilters together, taking trips that might not even be fully quilt related. I thought that was really interesting, and it really got my mind going on different ways we can incorporate our business in the quilting world and all of that together. What was your biggest takeaway?
Well, I also was inspired by her stories of the ideas that came from community, and I know that's what we are trying to do with the Quilting on the Side, all of our hustlers that we're bringing along with us to learn more about the business side of things. But I was also really inspired by how she reached out to learn new things. She said she had always wanted to do fabric design, surface design, and so she took the opportunity to learn. And she mentioned some other mastermind type masterclass groups, and so the resources are out there. Don't think that just because you don't know something yet that the door is closed, because you can always figure out how to find your way into that new space.
Keyword yet.
Yes.
We don't know it yet.
Yeah, totally change your mindset and opens up new opportunities. Okay.
That was beautiful. And
And if you enjoyed this episode of Quilting on the Side, please leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our next chat. Until then, remember to have fun in your business and do a little quilting on the side.